Guys, welcome back. Behavior Strategies for Class here. This is where we are empowering educators with effective behavior management strategies that work. And this today is where we're going to talk about from meltdowns to mindfulness, guiding your students' behavior. And this is also the first in a self-regulation series. This truly has been an issue with all students. And I'm sure you saw this evidence of this every day last year. Students just going from 0 to 100 in seconds, and they are just really struggling in this skill in learning how to regulate their emotions. And so this is what we're going to dive into today. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to Behavior Strategies for Class. I am Diane Bachman, your behavior paraprofessional with over 15 years of experience working in special education. And I'm so glad you're here because I'll be teaching you about social emotional learning, behavior strategies, trauma-informed care, and more. So if you are tired of being frustrated and not knowing what to do with your students who have challenging and disruptive behavior, you're in the right place. Now, if you're ready to become more equipped to help your students learn and grow, let's listen in to today's episode. So before we get started, I encourage you to hit that subscribe button, share this episode, this podcast with other educators that you know, so that we can continue to learn and grow together. Also, check out the link in the show notes to get on the email list to get upcoming news, updated behavior info. Again, I would love to hear from you, and I truly appreciate your support. So, working with our students and helping them with their self-regulation has really been, it's a continuous learning skill. It's been a struggle, obviously, for some of our students. Other students, they're really comprehending and understanding and being able to self-advocate for themselves, being able to speak up and let us know, hey, I just don't want to be in class right now, or I'm tired, or sometimes it's I'm bored, or you get the, well, I just hate school and school's dumb and blah, blah, blah. Like, get it. I get it. Now, some of the ways we helped our students self-regulate is they would ask for that break and being able to know, okay, this is a good time. We usually try not to pull them when, their teacher is in the middle of a lesson. If they are not, completely escalated or anything, we just try and give them let's give about 5 more minutes, or, when the teacher is done with the lesson, because we have our students always let their teachers know, that they want to take a break, or you need to ask your teacher, is this a good time? We want to honor both. And sometimes that is a struggle. Sometimes that doesn't work out perfectly. Sometimes our students need to come out right away. We don't have time to wait. Other times, I know sometimes you want them to wait because you have something else you want to teach, or you want them to finish out this worksheet or this project. And so it is a give and take, and working with you guys as you're teaching again in your lesson, we do our best not to interrupt that or have our student miss out on what you're teaching. But again, we also want to honor our student when they're actually using their words and they're requesting for help or a break or whatever it is. And so working together, obviously, with everybody in the school, wherever that student is, and honoring when they use their words. Sometimes they walk out of the classroom, and so we have to come back and process with them as well. So if they walk out of the class, we usually do give them the minute or so, and then we process and talk with them, what's going on, why, it's not a safe decision just to leave your room without asking or telling anybody. And So we have to teach them. So what is the boundary there? So what can they do instead? And that's when we say when you can ask for a break, or when most of the classrooms now do have a quiet space, ask to go sit in the quiet space for a minute. I really feel, though, when you are creating those quiet spaces, quiet corner, calm corner, whatever, you want to name it, what works for you, is it really does need to be, as much as you can, pretty regulated also in that space. I've seen way too many students just take advantage, and the teacher gets teaching, or you're moving on to something else, and so you lose track of time of Johnny's over in the corner now 15 minutes and he's missing out on a lot of learning. And so what are the expectations? And I think if you're able to make that clear, what are those expectations when you go back in the quiet corner? Maybe have those listed somewhere, and maybe have the options listed. What can they do when they're in the quiet corner, or what should they be doing? So those really help for them to focus in, okay, I'm trying to regulate my emotions, and having them be able to come and identify. And it's really worked well for some of our students. We also have posters in our room that are color coded, because we use the color wheel and the feelings. And so if they're feeling red, so they're mad, they're angry, they're upset, then it lists even on the poster, okay, you could do some deep breathing. You could, just sit for a minute. You could take a walk. You could do jumping jacks. Whatever it is, it lists. So there's a lot of different free resources out there that you can have posters, so that you're not constantly teaching in the corner as well, right? So you already have everything set up there. So they can sit, okay, well, now I'm feeling this way. Okay, well, now I can do some breathing exercises. Or, maybe you have some books back there. So a lot of our students have used that to help self-regulate. Other times, they need a running break. We've had a couple students like, I just need to run. Can I go outside? Or you can tell when they're in the classroom, like they have so much energy. What can they do with this energy? Sometimes it's just in the hallway and they're doing wall push-ups, or squats, something, doing some heavy work, as we call it. Sometimes we have students carry some library books and bring those to the library, or we have some books and we have them take them to the office, even though that's not technically where they're supposed to be, but it's that heavy work that helps kind of regulate and center their bodies. We also have weighted blankets. We've used weighted vests that help get that calmness with their bodies. So those are a couple things that we have used and found successful with our students. And another caveat to say, just like really everything else about behavior, it is an not on time. It's not a one-time skill lesson that you're teaching. This is ongoing. That's what I was trying to say. This is ongoing, a skill that you are constantly teaching and reteaching, reminding, pointing. And so that sometimes we have students come in and they know automatically what they can do and what they need to do. And so that's really our goal, because we want them to learn how to self-regulate. What do they need at that time to help them get in that self-regulation so that they can get back to their learning. So academic success really involves self-regulation, those managing emotions, staying organized, setting goals, and they can't do any of those if they are not able to regulate themselves. And so really, it's a brain-body connection, right? It goes from impulse control to decision making, and how is their brain connecting and processing in order to communicate with their bodies on how they need to respond. So it's really sensory processing. how their brain is receiving, organizing, and responding to all of the information that they receive from all their five senses. And I think sometimes you see your students, they are in sensory overload. And that's what we say. Like they are just on overload. And that's why some of our students who have autism have a tough time sitting in a school assembly or a class party or another school-wide event because there is just too much going on that it is hard for their brain to process all of those sensory things that are going on. Like, parties are a lot of fun and kids love it, but sometimes you'll see a kid sitting in the corner or sitting by themselves. Sometimes I've seen students just with their head down. Like, it's too much. They just cannot deal with it. They cannot have their bodies process all of this in. We've had some students, they'll go in assembly and they got 5 minutes and they're done. We have other students that walk into a class party and they walk right back out. Like, they're like, nope, can't do it. It's just too much. They cannot process all of that. Their bodies are at max and it's just too much to process for them. And that's okay. We have learned that's okay. We're not going to force you to stay in there if you don't want to be there, if it's too much. Other times they'll do one of the fun projects or crafts that they have and then they're done. Or of course, sometimes it's the food. Who doesn't want some cool, yummy snacks? And they'll grab some food and then they're like, okay, that's good. I'm done. So they're learning also, and that's where we want to honor that. They're learning this is too much. I cannot, they just can't be in there. And that's okay. Their bodies and their brains can't cope. They cannot process anything else. And that's okay. Because how your body processes that sensory input helps with the regulation, and that's where your brain and body need to come into a balance so that your brain is responding in a positive way as much as possible when they have all of these senses going on. And ultimately, when you have students who have been through trauma, even at a young age, their brains are not even developing the same way as those students who have not had any trauma. And so those sensory inputs and those neurons are not even connecting at times, or they're connecting at a very slow process. And so it's just way too much. And so they don't have time to come together and process this overwhelm of emotions. And that's why you see those meltdowns. They can't take it anymore. So, and sometimes their meltdowns are, they just sit and cry, scream. We've had one student, he was wailing. He could not calm down. He was finally able to get out. He needed to call his mom because he knew his mom's boyfriend had hurt her before. And he could not get it together until he talked to his mom and knew his mom was safe. And so once he was able to communicate that, we took him right away and said, yeah, call your mom. And he was able to talk to his mom and he felt so much better so that his brain and his body could be calm and regulated. Then he was finally able to access his learning and go back to his gen ed class. Otherwise, he just can't even function because now his mind and his thoughts are on his mom. You have students who are struggling with that as well, let alone to deal with all the sensory that they get from being in the classroom, right? With so many different things going on. It's been great to see some of the teachers have used dimmed lighting in the classroom. And that really has helped a lot of students. I like a more natural light. Some classrooms don't have access to a window, so they dim the lights, or they use some LED lights around the room, or they do like self-standing lights so that they don't have these huge, bright lights on like 24/7 when they're in there, because it really does make a difference. And so that really has been a calming effect on all students that I've seen. So, what are some of the self-regulation skills that you can teach your students? Because this is something, again, like I said, it's an ongoing skill. And this is something that you are modeling every day. So by you being authentic, you come in, I'm sure, and that day you may be like especially tired, or maybe you're upset or frustrated about something. And you could let them know, you know what, guys, this is a tough day. I didn't get enough, sleep. I had to rush out this morning, whatever it was, and just let them know I'm having a tough time. So, just so you know, I'm going to do my best to get through the lesson and, go on with the day. And so you are modeling and setting that example to them that you can be upset, you can be frustrated, but you can be still functioning, still learning. You're not hurting yourself. You're not hurting anybody else. You're still there doing what needs to be done. So that's a huge example by modeling that self-regulation. So some of the skills, I have about 7, 8 that you can use to help your students self-regulate. And this, one of the ways you do that is giving them an option and being able to express their emotions, and that's in journaling. Giving them that opportunity. Maybe they don't want to express it to anybody else. It's just easier for them to write it out or maybe draw pictures. Journaling is key for them. And you'll learn with your students, right, what works for them. And sometimes they'll tell you. Other times you're just trying different things and seeing, okay, well, this works better for you. Let's, stick with this for your self-regulating. And actually, the first thing I would do before teaching some of these other skills, let me back up, is really by teaching their emotions. They could say, like, growing their emotional intelligence, right? Getting that emotional language for them. That has been really exciting to see our students learn as well. I'm really sad right now. I'm really angry. Just having them use those words and identify exactly how they're feeling, that is growing their emotional intelligence. Because when they know and they can identify how they're feeling, then they can journal it, right? Then they can write it out once they're able to identify that. And so as you're teaching that emotional intelligence and teaching their emotions, you're teaching, giving them examples. Okay, what if this situation happened? How would you handle it? So that's one way to teach that emotional intelligence. Another way is teaching them the size of the problem or situation that they're dealing with. The reality of, is this a huge problem that you need to be screaming, crying, and yelling about? Or is this something that you can help solve with a peer? Or do you need to talk to an adult? Teaching them the reality of the situation or problem that they come across. What can they do about it? Because we all know, a broken pencil is not really a reason for a huge meltdown, right? And we've all seen it, right? When they already know where you keep, the sharpened pencils. All they need to do is get up and go get it, But they're having a meltdown because their pencil broke. I know you guys have been there. I know you guys have seen that. And you're just like, oh, okay. And who knows? Maybe they're having a horrible day too. And that was just one last thing for them. We get that too. But the reality is, this is a small problem. Like, you can get up and you can fix it, right? If they're dealing with peer problems, peer pressure, peer fights, or whatever it is, how can they work through that, right? Because we don't always want to have to like give the answer. I'm putting quotes, like you can see me, quotes over give the answer. You're not, because you want them to start thinking, using that brain, getting those neurons going, creating new neuron paths so that they can be like, oh, okay, well, this is what I did last time. Now let's try and do that this time and see what is the solution. What is a better solution than having a huge meltdown or causing somebody else to get hurt? So that emotional intelligence is super important. So that would be your number one skill to teach them, to get that emotional intelligence growing, using those emotion words, helping them to identify those emotions. Another way is by giving them a quiet time. I know a lot of teachers, they may need 5 minutes, or they may need 5 minutes to either their own quiet time, which I've seen, or you guys have last minute stuff you got to grab before you teach the next lesson. And so it's, everybody grab your book and you're going to sit and read for a few minutes. Perfect. I've also seen it in the kindergarten classes, when they come in from lunch, they're all super excited, and now it's like, okay, guys, guess what? It's a quiet time. And they do some quiet activities, or they watch like Magic School Bus. I love that one. And just have a little bit of quiet before they move on to the rest of their day, and that they can be able to come back, be more emotionally regulated, centered, so that their minds can focus on the lesson and the learning that they need to do. And other ways you can do that, again, in a personal way, and having that quiet, calm corner. When you see maybe one student who's just not coming back yet, and I've seen this in the kindergarten classroom, and I believe like this is where we need to start. We can't wait until they're in middle school and be like, okay, how about you identify yourself? I mean, I'm not saying like you can never wait until then, but we want to hopefully help you guys get this going in the elementary level so that they are better equipped when they get to those fun puberty stages in middle school, high school, and all the other situations that come up then. So you are helping laying that foundation at the elementary level in getting those self-regulation skills, creating that quiet corner, calm corner, so they can go and take a minute. Whether you have to redirect them there, or, you have a special sign or a special color-coded card that a student holds up, and okay, they're holding that up, they need to go sit over there for a minute. So it doesn't become this huge big deal like, Johnny, get over there in the corner. Granted, sometimes they need that redirection over there. But overall, if you're able to have some code, or I don't know, sign language or something, so that that student needs to go, and take those moments, be able to center themselves again and come back to their learning, is super important too. And then one last thing I would say is those emotional check-ins, checking in with your students, having them check in with their emotions, in the beginning of the day, maybe the middle of the day, and maybe the end of the day, if you're able to do that. I can't remember the name of the color codes that we use at this exact moment, but there's all kinds online that you can use, getting a color wheel, and teachers have made each student their own magnet, and so they can move it around to how they're feeling, at that time. Or It's sometimes a counselor coming in and checking in with some students. Or, maybe it's at lunchtime. You need to talk to one student, and because you see that they're struggling. So, to recap, these self regulation skills that you can teach your students is one, growing and teaching their emotional intelligence, teaching them about emotions and how to identify them. Number two is teaching them the reality of their problem. How big is this problem? Is it, up to a 10 and you need to talk to your, counselor like right away? Or is it something that they can just talk to their peer or maybe just talk to you and be able to work through that situation? Number three is journaling. Giving them that opportunity. Maybe they don't want to talk, they want to draw, they want to write it out, and giving them a set amount of time to do that. Maybe it's at the end of the day, maybe the middle of the day. I don't know, whatever works for you. But giving them that time to help regulate themselves by expressing it in their journal. Number four is giving quiet time for the class as a whole, giving that reading time. And maybe that's a time you teach, breathing techniques, blowing out their candles, which is their fingers, doing deep belly breaths, and coming back to regulate themselves. Those work really well. Number five, getting those emotional check-ins. Are you doing it once a day? Can you do it twice a day? Maybe you're doing it personally with certain students that may be going through some tough family time, doing some extra check-ins with them. But also having your students, all of your students in your class, checking in on how they're feeling at the moment. And then number six is to remember that you are always modeling this. How are you self-regulating? And so what of these skills are you going to use maybe more of next year? Or what skills really worked last year? Or maybe you just haven't had a time or opportunity to teach emotional intelligence. How can that be weaved into your curriculum? These are super important because this self-regulation skill is going to help your students the rest of their lives. And so teaching this skill is super important. And so this quote is from Brian Harris from In Education Week, and he is a teacher. And he says self-regulation and self-control can be learned, and the ability to control one's behavior is a key feature of success in school and in life. So like I said, this is the first in a self-regulation series, and teaching your students to go from meltdowns to mindfulness will grow them academically as well as in their behavior. So thanks so much, guys. I will see you next week. Thanks so much for listening. I truly appreciate your support. And if I have encouraged you, motivated you to continue to learn, to support your students, even better, to help them strive in your classroom, please leave a review, hit that subscribe button so that others can see they can learn and grow here as well. Thank you.